This is your World News broadcast, streaming to you live from the capital, Algiers, and up next are tonight's top stories. Sahrawi president warns of an existential challenge, reaffirms self-determination. Next up, Libya declares maximum alert after drone attack on Zawiya oil refinery. Also on news tonight, Iran rejects threats as Pakistan signals possible US-Iran peace deal. And later on, Russia-Ukraine fighting escalates, leaving dead and wounded on both sides. This story and more shortly. Welcome back to the details. First off, in our news tonight, the 14th Summer University for Officials of the Polisario Front in the Sahrawi Republic has opened in Boumerdès, Algeria, bringing together more than 330 participants under the theme Resistance, Freedom and Total Independence. Running through August 20th, the event brings together academics and supporters of the Sahrawi cause. Organizers say the annual gathering remains a platform to reaffirm the Western Sahara issue as a decolonization question and to defend the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and independence. On this occasion, Sahrawi President Brahim Ghali has warned of what he called an existential challenge facing the international community amid growing disregard for international legitimacy, particularly the right of peoples to self-determination. Speaking at the opening of the 14th Summer University in Boumerdès, Ghali warned against efforts to replace international law with a logic of power, influence, and vested interests.
We have long warned, and we are reiterating that warning today, because the Moroccan occupying state, with its Makhzen regime, constitute, through its expansionist and aggressive policies, a permanent threat to the region in particular, but also to Africa, Europe and beyond. A regime that enshrines in its constitution what it calls historical borders rather than international borders, makes all neighboring countries potential targets liable to be invaded and attacked at any time.
Western Sahara President Brahim Ghali went on to say a just and lasting solution to the conflict must guarantee the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination or freely and democratically. Ghali says the Polisario Front has demonstrated goodwill and readiness for dialogue while calling for a firm response to Morocco's continued attempts to impose the status quo.
The UN Security Council Resolution 2797, despite attempt to give undue priority to the Moroccan expansion proposal, unequivocally confirms that a just and a lasting solution to the Western Sahara conflict must necessarily allow the Sahrawi people to freely and democratically exercise their right to self-determination.
Meanwhile, Sahrawi President Brahim Ghali has accused the European Union of turning a blind eye to Morocco's violations of international law and European court rulings. He says agreements allowing the exploitation of the Sahrawi resources amount to continued plunder, while warning that Morocco poses a persistent and serious threat to Europe's security. Let's take a listen again.
I don't believe that we would be mistaken if we say that the international community is facing an existential challenge, because the blatant effort and frantic attempt, explicit and well known, to prioritize the logic of influence, interest, and the law of the jungle will lead to pitfalls and paths in which the only certainty is that they will not bring good and peace to humanity.
On the same event, Algeria's parliament has renewed its firm support for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination through a free and fair UN-supervised process. Both chambers rejected any attempt to impose solutions outside international legitimacy, stressing that Algeria's position is principled and not driven by political calculations. It also called for the decolonization of Western Sahara and Palestine.
Drawing on its proud revolutionary history marked by major victories against colonialism, and a long-standing commitment to support the liberation movement around the world, particularly in Africa. Algeria is proud to stand with the resilient Sahrawi people in their existential struggle. Today, under the leadership of President Abdelmajid Tebboune, Algeria is at the front of growing international diplomatic support for a fair settlement that the Sahrawi people can freely accept. At the same time, Algeria rejects any attempt to prolong the conflict by extending temporary measures or imposing unfounded solutions that circumvent international legitimacy and repackage colonialism in a new, domineering form.
Under the leadership of President Abdelmajid Tebboune and in keeping with its revolutionary history and constitutional principles, Algeria has made the defense of people's right to self-determination a firmly established pillar of its foreign policy. This is a principled position, driven neither by short-term political calculations nor by the balance of power. It is rooted in international legitimacy, the UN Charter, and the resolutions of the UN General Assembly and Security Council. From this standpoint, and as elected representatives, we reaffirm once again that the Western Sahara issue remains a decolonization issue. A just and lasting solution can only be achieved by enabling the Sahrawi people to exercise their inalienable right to self-determination through a free and fair process under UN supervision, in line with international legitimacy and its resolutions.
From Western Sahara to Libya, the country's national oil corporation has declared a state of maximum emergency at the Zawiya refinery following a series of drone attacks. The latest strike targeted a fuel tank, causing a fire that emergency teams managed to contain. The NOC warns that continued attacks could force it to declare force majeure and suspend operations at the refinery. In response to the attacks, Libya's Presidential Council member Abdullah al-Lafi has called for stronger measures to protect vital national infrastructure and ensure its safety. During a meeting with military and security officials in Zawiya, he discussed the recent fuel tank fire and stressed the need for greater coordination among relevant authorities to address such incidents and reinforce security and stability. Adding to these calls, Libya's High Council of State has condemned attacks and acts of sabotage targeting the Zawiya refinery and other vital oil facilities. It warned that such actions threaten lives and property as well as Libya's energy security. The Council stressed that oil and vital infrastructure are a red line and must never become hostage to political conflicts.
The Council strongly condemns these acts and stresses that all facilities and vital infrastructure are red line. Tampering with them or putting them at risk is a crime that threatens state security and the interests of the entire Libyan people. They must never be held hostage to conflicts or political disputes. The Council holds the Ministries of Interior and Defense along with the relevant security and military agencies responsible for immediately carrying out their duties to restore security, secure the city of Zawiya, its refinery and other vital facilities, protect lives and public and private property, and prevent such attacks from happening again.
Meanwhile, in neighboring Tunisia, Tunisian President Kais Saied has pledged to fight corruption and what he described as environmental and political pollution in the country. During a visit to Gaza, he stressed that public institutions are not for sale, while affirming that Tunisians want corruption dismantled and justice upheld. Saied also vowed to confront what he called conspiracies against Tunisia.
There are a number of measures that have already been implemented, which do not contribute to emissions. These are the guiding measures, but the work is initially focused on immediate solutions. Then, once the issue has been studied from all angles, we can arrive at a comprehensive and long-term solution. The institutions and facilities, God willing, will remain wholly Tunisian and continue to belong to the Tunisian people. I commend you for what you have done and salute you for the remarkable awareness and tremendous efforts you have made on numerous occasions.
Turning to the Middle East now, Iran says it would keep the Strait of Hormuz closed until Washington accepts its conditions for ending the war, even as diplomatic efforts by Pakistan and Qatar raised hopes of a deal that could pave the way for reopening the vital energy corridor. Marabali reports now.
The Strait of Hormuz will remain closed as long as the US does not accept Iran's conditions to end the war. That was the latest statement by the newly appointed Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. Mohsen Rezai's comments came as an indication that any deal in talks with Oman over the waterway would not immediately reopen it to shipping if the US does not also abide by its own commitments under the June Memorandum of Understanding.
As long as America does not change its behavior and does not accept Iran's conditions, the Strait of Hormuz will not be opened. If an agreement is reached between Iran and Oman regarding the transit route through the Strait of Hormuz, this agreement will be a matter separate from the closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
About Iran today opposing their...
There was no immediate comment from Washington on these latest comments, but US President Donald Trump had already raised a new US demand himself, that Iran pay compensation for people he said it killed in wars, adding that the Strait of Hormuz is under the control of US Navy.
A little bit complex because they will, on occasion, drop a mine, and we find the mines. We've mine-swept the entire strait, as you probably maybe heard, maybe you didn't hear, but we control the strait 100%. Now, can they make trouble? Yeah, they can make trouble. But they're broke, they have no money.
The escalating rhetoric from both sides was accompanied by new attacks on vessels in the Gulf of Oman and the Red Sea, where 4 crew members were killed in a suspected attack by the Houthis on a small cargo vessel in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. On the diplomatic front, meanwhile, mediators Pakistan and Qatar have raised hopes that Iran and the US may be edging closer to an agreement that could, in effect, pave the way for the reopening of the key energy trade route.
Against this backdrop, Iran's new Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, Mohsen Rezai, says that Iran will not back down in the face of threats to its rights and interests. He vows stronger decisions, greater deterrence, and an immediate response to any aggression, while stressing the use of diplomacy to protect Iran's regional and international interests. Along the same lines, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says the world has recognized Iran's ability to confront the United States. He claims Tehran's resistance ultimately forced Washington to seek negotiations, according to remarks made to the media on Tuesday.
No one thought that Iran could resist in this way against America, with the Israeli regime accompanying it and the support of many other countries, and ultimately force the enemy to ask for negotiations. The US president wrote 2 words at the beginning of the war: unconditional surrender. That was what they wanted from us. And that same enemy, after approximately 20 days, was then begging for negotiations. And in diplomacy as well, the Iranian nation showed that it knows very well how to defend its rights.
The U.S. military says its forces opened fire on a Panama-flagged vessel after its crew ignored warnings while allegedly attempting to breach a naval blockade of Iranian ports. Britain's Maritime Trade Agency reported an incident involving the container ship Villanova and military forces in the Gulf of Oman after a projectile struck the vessel, causing injuries. U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington has 3 options for dealing with Iran: monitoring its situation, launching powerful strikes, or applying economic pressure. Trump says the U.S. still has the ability to escalate, but is currently negotiating with Tehran. Meanwhile, shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has fallen sharply amid rising tensions. Elsewhere in the Middle East, Israeli occupation forces continue to violate the Gaza ceasefire for the 306th consecutive day. The Palestinian Health Ministry says 1,259 people have been killed and 4,146 injured as a result, bringing the reported toll of the occupation war to at least 73,387 deaths and 174,257 injuries. The humanitarian crisis is also deepening in Gaza. The summer heat is making life even more unbearable under the tents, as occupation's blockade keeps basic necessities out of reach. From fans to lighters, everyday items have become scarce and unaffordable, adding to the hardships of a population already struggling to survive. Zara Virginia has more.
In August, the heat is unbearable under the tents in Gaza. There is no air conditioning, no fans, and no cold water, putting bodies under immense strain, particularly those of children.
I don't understand why they refuse to let fans through. What are we going to do with rocket? We can no longer live under these tents. Pieces of cardboard are being used as fans, and we pour water over the children because of the heat.
Fans are among the products banned from entering the enclave under the Zionist blockade. Gazans, therefore, have only one option: recycle old appliances, which now cost a small fortune. Before the genocide, prices did not exceed 300 shekels. Today, a fan can cost as much as 1,500 shekels, or around $400.
Demand is exceptionally high because every household needs at least one fan. The one available were salvaged from under the rubble. We recover old motors and repair them, but they don't last long. It has been nearly 3 years since a new fan entered Gaza.
Lighters are also banned from entering Gaza under the occupation blockade. The absence of this everyday essential is making life even harder for Gazans, who can no longer cook. These restrictions have turned lighters into a rare commodity, with prices reaching as high as 120 shekels.
I want to speak about my suffering and the suffering of all Palestinians because of the lack of lighters. There is no gas and no lighters to cook or bake bread. They are nowhere to be found.
Since October 7, 2023, the Zionist entity has imposed strict control over the enclave's border crossings, preventing the free entry of aid and goods, and even completely shutting the crossings for 3 months in 2025, a measure that plunged Gaza into a severe famine. The movement of goods has increased somewhat since the ceasefire agreement took effect in October, but restrictions remain in place on many essential commercial products.
Beyond Gaza, the violence is also being reported in the West Bank, where at least 12 Palestinians have been injured in attacks by occupation forces and settlers across the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Red Crescent says 6 people, including 2 children, were injured during an occupation raid in Burka near Nablus. In Ramallah, 6 others suffered tear gas inhalation after settlers protected by occupation forces attacked residents in Al-Mughayr. And in Lebanon, the health ministry says 2 people were injured in an Israeli occupation airstrike targeting an ambulance in Kfar Roman in the Nabatiya region. The ambulance was hit while evacuating people wounded in an earlier strike. The ministry condemned the attack as a violation of international law as the occupation strikes continue across southern Lebanon. Turning to the war in Ukraine now, at least 9 people were killed and around 20 others injured in Russian attacks on eastern Ukraine early Tuesday. 6 were killed in Zaporizhia and 3 in Dnipropetrovsk. Meanwhile, Russian authorities reported 2 deaths and 9 injuries following a Ukrainian drone attack in the Belgorod and Voronezh regions. In response, Russia's defense ministry says its forces carried out a large-scale strike on military, industrial, and logistics facilities in Kiev. The ministry says precision weapons targeted a storage facility for drone production components, automated and electronic warfare systems, as well as a logistics center reportedly used to store attack drones. On the battlefield, Russia's defense ministry says its forces have captured 2 more settlements in Ukraine's Kharkiv and Zaporizhia regions. The ministry says the northern grip took control of Sherbakovka in Kharkiv, while units from the eastern grip advanced through Ukrainian defenses and captured Novy Pol in Zaporizhia. To a different news story now, rescue teams are continuing the search for survivors in western Colombia after a powerful earthquake killed at least 111 people and left many others trapped beneath collapsed buildings. Kermis Foy has more in this report now.
Rescue operations are continuing across dozens of cities and towns in western Colombia, with emergency crews and volunteers working around the clock to find survivors trapped beneath the rubble, following what the authorities described as the strongest earthquake to hit the country this century. For rescuers, every minute counts, and for families gathered near the collapsed buildings, every sound from beneath the rubble brings a little more hope.
The entire Cali Fire Department was deployed with all its capabilities. We are at different locations trying to reach every lost area and verify whether there are signs of life.
I arrived from Medellin this morning at 2 a.m. to see how I can help find my brother, who I assume is back there. I'm absolutely certain he's there. Absolutely certain. His horse saddle and all his belongings are here. He's not answering his phone. The doorman didn't report him leaving, and his car is parked right there. He's trapped there.
As the rescue operation continues, authorities are also appealing for public support, urging Colombians to donate food and hygiene supplies to the communities most affected by the earthquake.
We currently need all personal hygiene supplies. These include soap, toothpaste, toothbrushes, shaving cream, razors, and diapers to meet all personal hygiene needs, in addition to supplies for housing or accommodation.
According to local sources, more than 1,400 people have been injured following the 7.4 magnitude earthquake, with at least 169 have lost their lives. With people still feared trapped beneath collapsed buildings, the authorities warned that the death toll could rise further.
And finally, time to catch up on other international news stories in the News in Brief with Sofian Kantouri this time.
Sudanese authorities said Tuesday that the army had repelled an attack by Rapid Support Forces and the allied Sudan's People's Liberation Movement on the town of Kaysan in Blue Nile State, near the Ethiopian border. The Democratic Republic of Congo said Tuesday that confirmed deaths from Ebola have surpassed 2,000, raising concerns over what health officials described as the fastest recorded outbreak of the disease. The German Farmers' Union has called on government to provide faster and larger aid packages to support the agricultural sector as persistent drought and heat waves threatens to push crop yields below average. China's Ministry of Commerce has announced high financial guarantees as part of anti-dumping measures on pecan imports from the United States and Mexico. The ministry said Beijing has consistently exercised caution and restraint in using trade remedy measures. The measures take effect Tuesday, requiring U.S. importers to pay a uniform security deposit of 44.3% after no American companies participated in the investigation.
Well, that's all for tonight, but to catch up on any part you missed or get the latest updates, you can always visit our social media platforms. Thank you for watching. Good night.